Hey everyone, Kristen Sinatra Walker here, host of Mental Health News Radio, and I have an amazing co-host who also sponsors my show with his incredible text messaging application called Cope Notes. So make sure you go to copenotes.com and check it out. But Johnny Crowder is also the lead singer in a heavy metal band called Prison, and he is here today to share hosting duties with me. Hey, Johnny.
Hello, I'm psyched because this is the first podcast we've done that centers around mental health and metal. It's about time that has happened.
I know. And I hope, we do more of that because it's this interesting space that talks a lot about mental health. Hence, our guest, Mark Hunter, has joined us. He is the lead in the group Chimera, which thank God I knew how to pronounce that correctly. And you're also in a documentary about mental health called Down Again. Mark, thank you so much for agreeing to come on the show.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. And it's nice to see you again, Johnny.
Hey, I actually just added, you have a song called Down Again, right?
Correct.
So I just added that to a playlist like a couple days ago.
Oh, nice.
I was at a tattoo shop and someone was playing that song and I was like, when I toured with you guys, I slept on, I don't know if you played that song.
No.
But I was about to say, if they would have played this, I would remember it. It's such a good one. So it's cool that you named the documentary after it.
Awesome. Thank you.
So we're going to get into all kinds of stuff, but first of all, how did the documentary come about? What motivated you to do that? And how did that even happen?
Back in 2017, there was a festival being put together by Derek Hess, who's an amazing artist from Cleveland. And it was called Acting Out. And the whole focus was about mental health and addiction. And one of the producers of this festival reached out and asked if there was any chance in the world Chimera would reunite and play this show. And we were unable to do that because secretly we were plotting our reunion show that wound up happening in December of 2017. So I had to decline on that, but I was like, man, this sounds like a really fantastic idea, and I'd like to be involved in some way. So I mentioned that. I don't know if you are having guest panels or I could put up artwork or something, but I'd like to be involved. And I have hypomania, which is a form of bipolar 2. And I was even screenshotting my Cleveland Clinic diagnosis so I could prove that I was legit. I didn't know if I
really have a mental illness. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I just get concerned that some people use the term a little blanket, like a blanket expression, if you will. And what I have has actually been clinically diagnosed. So I just wanted them to know I was legit. And we did this festival where it was actually more of a panel for us. It was me, and then they put me with the director, Nick Cavalier, who had made a documentary about Derek Hess called Forced Perspective. And Nick also has bipolar. So they thought it would be interesting to put two creatives together that kind of talk about how we use our mental issues to our advantage. And it was moderated by a doctor, Dr. Patrick Runnels, who is also in the film. And so we just had a great discussion and a great time talking in front of a live audience and fielding questions and doing our best to just be honest about how this either affects us negatively or positively. And about, I don't know, a month later, maybe not even, Nick invited me out to lunch and suggested that we do it on film. And at first I was a little cautious and apprehensive because I just didn't know if I was interesting in the sense that if we look at a show like Intervention, we're watching the train wreck.
Right.
Or if we watch maybe something the opposite side, we've already seen the person after recovery and they're like on the top of the mountain. Maybe it's even over embellished how great they're doing.
Right.
So I was like, man, I'm kind of in between. I'm like, I'm neither of these. And is that interesting? And once, but I agreed to it because on the plus side, I get to have all this amazing footage of our reunion concert and me standing on stage with my friends in the band who we had such a a terrible tragic ending that we weren't friends for so long. So it was important for me to have that captured. So once Nick tore into making the film, it became clear to me that it was a little more allegorical and a little more, not so much about me, but it's a conversation starter. And I guess that made a little more sense to me, that I'm not really the character. It's like more or less the subject that is the character.
Well, that's the interesting thing is, there's one thing to be a performer, which I'm not a performer, so I have no idea what that feels like. But there's that, and then there's you living your everyday life, and, any kind of a mental health handicap is going to affect you in your real life and you as a performer. So it's an interesting thing to study. And yeah, I mean, when you get up every day and go to the bathroom and wash your clothes or not wash your clothes, whatever.
I love doing laundry, by the way. Don't ask me to fold it. I like the task of putting it in and putting the soap in, and then I'll even put it into the dryer.
And then you live out of the dryer. That's me with the dishes.
I'm lucky my girlfriend loves taking the clothes from the dryer, folding them, and putting them away. So I've managed to find the perfect companion. The yin to my yang.
Good. Well, for you, Johnny, what spoke to you about, wanting to come on and do this with us?
Well, I think it's funny how, I think this happens a lot, but so I toured with Chimera for maybe a month and a half in 2013, and we probably never once talked about anything mental health related. Definitely. And so I have been, among other things, I've been diagnosed with bipolar. And I think what made me want to come on is this happens all the time. We sit next to someone, or we're roommates with someone, or we've known our aunt for 20 years and it never came up. And that's sort of why I think it's important to have these chats now, because it's not like, oh, good, now I'm armed for when I meet someone who's diagnosed with a mental illness. It's like, no, now you're ready to talk to the people in your life who haven't spoken with you about it.
And yeah, exactly.
Especially in the metal and hardcore community, I always say one thing, and it's been true from when I started going to shows until now, and it's changed a lot, and Mark's been going to shows since forever, so he's probably seen it too. But in my experience, people don't show up at a metal show because everything's going okay. They're like, oh, my family life is perfect. I'm really in a great financial situation. I am really happy. People show up because they need a break and they need something different, and they're frustrated. And I think that's almost the perfect place for conversations about this, because the odds of people in the room being able to relate and connect with it are 99%.
Yeah, what do you think about that, Mark? I found that going to a couple of Johnny's shows, which was shocking to me.
Sure.
But, again, I'm not a performer. So what about you?
Absolutely. I've always thought of it as a spiritual environment, in a sense, where we're coming together, and a lot of times you feel this connection with lyrical content and screaming and passionately screaming, and they need this cathartic release. So it was very prominent in the Middle East when we played there, where they're not even allowed to say certain words in public. And we were told that we can't perform certain songs because of the words in them. And yet here we're playing, and we noticed the kids, this is the song we have called Power Trip, and
oh yeah,
screaming from the audience, power trip, power trip. And we're like, oh no, what do we do? So we're like, I'll just play it. I won't sing it. And I'll just put my hand out into the crowd, and you just hear everyone, 10,000 kids go, fuck. I mean, it was insane. So I really appreciate what it means to the audience of this release, and that everyone's going through something, and it's not a place where we're getting together like Margaritaville or something. It's the opposite of that.
Right, exactly. That's the fascinating part too, is what I've loved with, since I've been to Johnny's shows, is he will throw in the middle of just this set where I can tell, he's in his performer zone, and, I could be like, hey, hey, and he would not see me because he is in performance land. But right then, at the peak of everyone at a frenzy and feeling so incredible, he'll throw in some serious thing about suicide or about mental health or about sexual harassment or whatever. And I'm like, whoa, 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 to get people in that space where they're opened up because of the music and the energy and the performance, and to drop that in right at that moment, that's a huge, my God, that's a huge opportunity for education.
That's a skill set I wish I had. I admire people that have that ability. Even when I was younger, maybe not the best example, but Phil Anselmo with Pantera, he could stop a crowd and talk for 20 minutes. And maybe I don't agree with everything he said, but it's just a skill set I can't wrap my head around. I get so into the zone that I feel like I start tripping on my words, and I feel I can't express myself as clearly. And it's so I more or less took the Nine Inch Nails approach when I would go see Nine Inch Nails growing up. You're lucky to even get a thank you out of Trent. So it was I kind of just gravitated more towards that, but always admired those who are able to use the stage as a platform and a podium to bring awareness to the issues that they're passionate about.
But you do in the words that you're singing.
Quite possibly, yeah. But I mean, to have the ability to break away from that performance mindset and kind of touch upon things that are important to the people in the audience, that's a skill set I never worked on, because I just anytime I would attempt to say something, I would trip over myself, and it just I'll just go the Trent route. So
the balance for me is, like, when I was growing up and I was first going to shows, it would actually bother me if a frontman talked for like half the set.
Sure.
I would sort of be like,
there's that too. Yeah.
I did not download all of your music illegally from LimeWire and listen to it 100 times for you to only play 4 songs.
Right.
And so I think the balance is being able to say something short and pointed, like make very intelligent use of the limited time you have on stage, and basically say a whole lot in a very short, if you have 10 seconds between
words.
Songs. Yeah. And especially because we have our whole set is on a backtrack. So for our drummer, so it's all timed for him. It's not backtracked through the PA, but it's in his.
I understand, yeah.
It's all on a track. So we can't just pause and go on a rant. So I know, wow, I have 12 seconds to say something, and I hope it sticks with these kids, because we're about to go right back into another song. So
right.
To be like a little more resourceful, because sometimes the rants you can wind up saying something that you really didn't mean.
Yeah. And alienate half the audience. Yeah.
So if you have a very short amount of time, it makes you think, like, what is the one sentence I want to say? And a lot of time that sticks a lot better than 10 minutes, and you find yourself like, oh man, what have I been talking about?
Right. I think I actually did that at the reunion show, and it was something I had thought out quite a bit before I ever even stood on stage, was the point I wanted to make. And standing there, I just basically said that tonight is about forgiveness. And within our group, that was a big thing. And that's what it took for us to even get on the stage. So that was kind of my message to the audience. And so I kind of see what you mean by that. Like, it was a brief window, but it had to be impactful and thought out. So, yeah. That's cool stuff.
I would remember hearing that if someone said that, because kids come in thinking tonight's about Chimera.
Sure.
When you say something that contradicts that, they leave remembering it.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Good thought. Cool stuff.
So let's talk about this, the piece around, bipolar disorder and creativity, because there's so much out there. I've interviewed, Mark, you don't know, but I've interviewed over 1,000 people at this point.
Wow.
I've been doing my show for going over 5 years. And so, I've interviewed everyone from my mailman in where I used to live who has bipolar to the world leading addiction specialist, PhD with 800 letters after his name. So there's not been anyone I haven't, interviewed about all of this. And I've heard so many different things and I hear it all the time and it can't be stressed enough. And I'm not saying medication is the only way, because there are many roads to mental well-being, but there are so many people that really do need to take medication, or at least take it for a while, maybe with therapy, in order to get to a stable place or whatever it is, and they won't, because they have this idea in their head that it's going to kill my creativity if I do that. So what are your thoughts around that?
That's a great question. And I actually just talked about this because that was the point. When kind of trying to diagnose all of this with my doctor was a concern, was killing the creativity. And it was his concern, not so much mine.
Wow.
And I didn't even know that was a possibility. And so he was it's not that he was apprehensive, but just cautious about putting me on certain medications. And we tried a little bit of everything. But it was an era where I could get in with my doctor, call him that day, and it's not like this anymore. So,
right.
I was fortunate enough to be able to kind of tinker around with medications, like try this for a little bit. Well, how does this work? Well, it's pretty good. And then maybe it stopped working, or, oh, this one's making me think that aliens are feeding me the lyrics. Probably not working.
Right.
So it just took a little bit of time, and we were actually treating depression because with hypomania, I didn't realize that my highs were a problem. I didn't know that was a condition. I'm just like, wow, I can sit in front of a computer and work for 13 hours and then go out and then I can do this. And I was like, I don't need sleep. Whatever, who cares? Yeah. I didn't know that was a thing. I didn't know that. I had no ideas, but it was the depression side that I also have that we were looking at. So, why do I not want to get out of bed for a week? Or why am I having these real bad anxiety attacks? Or why am I couldn't even go into a restaurant. I think it was 2005. Any time I would walk into a public restaurant, I would start getting extremely nauseated. And if I even attempted to eat, I would definitely vomit. Wow. And I just remember being in England, and we were on tour, and I was with my tour manager, sound guy, Big John, and we were supposed to go to this dinner with Metal Hammer magazine, and it was a big award show, and of course everyone expects me to be there. I'm the voice of the band, I'm the front man, and I'm like, I'm so hungry, I can't go into this place though. I cannot go in here, I'm going to throw up. And he's like, all right, so what do you want to do? I'm like, well, let's go get some KFC, buckets of chicken, and hang out in the hotel room and just pig out. And that I was fine. I could do that, no problem. But go somewhere. I had this crazy anxiety. But so just didn't know what we were treating. It was so until one day I was in his office and I was actually in a manic state. He's just like, dude, I think you have hypomania. And I'm like, what's that? And he's just kind of laughing. He's like, yeah, you're definitely manic right now. Holy shit. And, and again, this is a family doctor for a long time. So we actually had this kind of dialect. I don't know if this would fly nowadays, but anyway, yeah. So yeah, we wound up testing myself for it. And then, I switched medication around.
Genetic testing?
Works. What's that?
Did you do genetic testing?
I have had genetic testing done. Yes, exactly. Okay. I have they call it the motherfucker gene. I have that mutation. And I'm very sorry if I'm swearing over a lot. You said it's okay, but
it's totally okay.
Don't open the floodgates with me. Yeah, I've done genetic testing through 23andMe, and I also went. There was a few other websites you can kind of take your print and then look into that as well. Dr. Rhonda Patrick has one I used, and I thought it was called Prometheus, but I've heard somebody pronounce it another way. But maybe Prometheus or something. But I don't know.
I don't know either.
That one as well. And that was an interesting one because it had like your effects to drugs and things like that, not like warfarin, but like LSD or something, or like cannabis, and like how are these things going to affect you and all of that sort of thing. So as a musician that was not against experimenting with my consciousness about 7 or 8 years ago, I found that to be a useful to have that genetic information.
Yeah, it is. It's really helpful. One of our sponsors is a company called My Genetics, and I'm all about that because, you know, the amount of years that I went through trying different medication and then finally taking one, which was Zoloft, where I was like, for 2 weeks, I was like, this is what it feels like to operate as a normal, functional human being, and then have it just stop working. And then you're like, holy I mean, the crash is not any different than how you've already been living, but it feels worse because you had normality for, you know, I could go anywhere. I didn't do what you're talking about. You know, I go into any restaurant, I could do whatever. And I was like, this is amazing. And then it's gone.
Right.
So to know after getting genetic testing done, that one is one that was never going to work for you. That was huge for me. So
Yeah, I had that same thing. Like on my list, there's like Celexa is one of them, and that's the one where the aliens were feeding me lyrics.
Right.
Zoloft, I was punching walls. What's the Prozac is the first one, right? This is what I've been in. Yeah, one of the first popular ones anyway. But like this is me in my teens, and it made me impotent. Which, man,
for a dude, that's not really a
dude, 16-year-old dude with impotence. Something's wrong. So
yeah,
I was quick to get off that. And yeah, what works for me is a very low dose of Lexapro, and it just kind of keeps me. I'll still have episodes like this morning. I woke up a little bit on the wrong side of the bed. I had a very stressful night. It was so stupid, but I sent my mom, this is a good story to tell though, but I sent my mom the movie to watch, and there was a great article in Psychology Today, and I sent it to her, and I never got a response. And I was like, oh, that's odd, because usually my mom would be excited to see a film that I'm in and read an article. So like 8:30, 9 o'clock rolls around, and I send her another text like, is everything okay? You know, still no response. And I'm like, all right, now I'm starting to trip. So I start calling her, no answer. And like, that's odd. It's not going to voicemail. It's just ringing. And I'm like, what the hell? And I call her best friend. Have you talked to her today? Well, no. Oh, great. So I drive over. I'm doing a wellness check. You know, I start banging on the door. She's like, well, the phone froze. I thought you didn't pay the bill. So I thought 11 o'clock at night, I thought my mom's dead. I'm ready to call the funeral parlor.
Right.
And here it's just the phone locked up on the AT&T screen. And I just had to reset it. But the whole day she has no phone. And she's like, well, I just figured you didn't pay the bill. So I woke up this morning. It's like I was still like down and stressed, but I digress. But the medication for me just kind of helps me a little bit more stay even keeled. It's not that I won't experience the highs or the lows, but they're less frequent and less intense. And especially knowing more about everything, it's like, oh, I can be cognizant and aware that I'm in that like headspace, like, and having people around me kind of point out, especially my better half, Lauren, she'll kind of do one of these like, hey dude, you're ramping up. I can tell. Like, did you take your medicine this morning? By like 3 o'clock in the afternoon, she'll know if I haven't taken it.
I know. I've known my ex-husband, and he's the father of our only child. I've known him for 32 years now, and since I was 18. And he can tell, just because we talk 8 times a day on the phone, but he can tell just by like how I answer the phone. Have you taken your Vyvanse yet, or have you, like did you get any sleep last night? And I can do the same for him. And that, I want to talk about that piece, how important it is to surround yourself with people who get it and have their own issues that they struggle with too. And so you get it for them also. Sure. Because I have been surrounded by people who like walked on eggshells or treated me like at any moment they need some kind of intervention because they have no idea what mental wellness is really about at all. They've got some ridiculous idea and stigma of their own. And so they bring that into my realm, and it's like, okay, this isn't healthy. But, I can have that with what I do, but I don't go out on tour and have all this energy thrown at me. So, and in spaces, I live and breathe in the mental health world. So I'm really in a nice bubble, but you guys go out to these places where, that's not necessarily the bubble you're in. So we'll start with you, Mark. How have you developed that, and when did you see the importance of having that kind of thing around you?
Unfortunately, I don't think I was really had a grasp on what was going on until the band was over. And so a lot of my insight came from that, and which is a great thing. So like on one hand, yeah, it's like, man, I just lost my career I spent 20 years working at. But on the other hand, it provided me an opportunity to actually work on myself and work on things to just improve. And I do have my better half and people in my family or close friends now that I can feel that I can rely on and call upon, that understand enough. And just to have a good friend that's a colleague as well, and that knows me well enough that I was supposed to take some photos for her this morning. It's not a huge deadline or a big deal, but I was like, I told her the story of what happened. And then I also said, I woke up low. Like, I'm not doing it because I'm going to go in there and I know I'm not going to be able to perform my best. I had interviews scheduled for the day. So I'm like, I'm just going to take time and relax myself so I can be focused for the interviews. And then I'll just reconnect with you and do a better job tomorrow or the next day.
Good for you. That takes a lot to be able to do that and have people that will be understanding of that, because
correct, yeah,
the pressure.
There's some people I can't turn down.
Perform. Yeah,
sure. That's unfortunate. It's not unfortunate, but like if I have a wedding, it's not like I can say, hey, can you guys reschedule your wedding? I'm loaded.
Yeah.
So, and that happens. Like I feel like I want to be manic on those days where I'm like, hey, I'm the life of the party. I have a ton of energy. I can blast through the 15 hours that it's going to take. And, but if I wake up in the opposite end, it's like, oh man, this is going to be bad. I'm going to start snapping at Granny, cause she's trying to take a picture over my shoulder and she doesn't even know how to use her iPhone. And I'm noticing that she doesn't know how to use her iPhone. And how come you don't know how to use your iPhone? And like, why are you using this phone? You don't even know how to use it. It's just a spiral. And,
yeah.
And then my better half, Lauren, is just a good assistant in my photography business as well. And she's from the South. So she's got Southern charm she can bring to the table, and everyone forgets that I'm in a bad mood. So
good. How about you, Johnny?
Well, I think it's funny that Mark said, like, with a wedding, you can't be like, can you get married later or next week? Because sometimes I feel like that on tour. Like, wow, I just agreed to play 47 shows in a row, and I have no way of knowing how I will feel on those days. So we make, like, as a touring musician, you don't agree to play a show this weekend. You commit to like these gigantic things that you genuinely aren't 1,000% sure that you can deliver on. Like if your vehicle breaks down or if you break a bone or you get sick, you're just like, you say blanket, yes, I will commit to all of that. But part of your head is like, well, hopefully your sister doesn't get pregnant while you're gone, and hopefully you don't miss something important, or and
or that you get depressed.
Yeah. And so I think it's interesting that we can't, like, I couldn't show up at a venue and be like, hey, promoter, I appreciate all the work you've done trying to get the word out about the show. I'm actually feeling a little not myself, so we're not going to play now, but maybe in a week or two we'll come back. It's like, no. So I think in those times it's important, like what Mark said, just to listen to yourself and understand when. I think a lot of musicians happen to be yes people because we want to make art super badly our whole lives. So whenever someone gives us an opportunity to do that, we're like 100%, absolutely. I'll schedule 20 interviews in one day because
I am a machine.
Yeah. And it's a skill that I'm always working on developing, is realizing, like, sometimes kids will want to talk for like hours after I get off stage. And I think to myself, man, I want to put a Ricola in my mouth and sit on a curb for a half hour and listen to a podcast or something and just like be a person before I come in and do that part. It's really challenging to prioritize self-care when in my head touring is very much it is somewhat for me, but in a large part it's for the people who are going to see the shows.
Right.
So it feels like sometimes I'll stand in my own way when it comes to self-care, because I'll be like, oh, these kids paid $20 and these kids waited in line. It's like, hey, you spent 12 years trying to get to this show actually, so like give yourself a break,
Right. That's the piece, that inner dialogue that goes on. That's been the biggest thing for me to reconcile, is just how much I talk to myself like I would never speak to another human being. Even if I hated them, I wouldn't talk to them with what goes on dialogue wise, but also with what I don't do for myself, that I'm just this machine. And I've been called that, you're a machine, like you do a show no matter what. And so I still struggle with this, but I finally, what really helped me is I just started telling people, look, I am in trauma right now while we're doing this show. I'm having a massive anxiety attack and I will do the best I can to get through it. But I'm doing this show like this right now. And I was really ashamed about that for a long time. And then I thought, this is real fucking life. Like, that's reality.
Sure.
So why not just freaking say it? So that's helped me. And people are very forgiving in the space that I'm in, of course. So
I wonder, Johnny, if you've had moments like, I think some of the most disappointing times on a tour or performing is when maybe you wake up in the funk and you're counting on the show to bring you that switch in consciousness, and the show just doesn't go right. Maybe no one shows up, or maybe it's okay, but you still can't get out of it.
Yeah.
I hate those nights. Like, I really wish you could be, it's like you're expecting it to snap you out of it. The drug's not working today. Why not?
Yeah. I think it's sort of like the moments, even when there's not a lot of kids there, I think I'm getting better at remembering why I'm playing the show in the first place.
Sure.
Like, each person has an individual experience with the show, but what I have a little more difficult time explaining away is technical difficulties.
Right.
Like, if our kit goes out and the sound guy's on stage while we're playing a song, I'm just like, man, I can see these kids are looking at the sound guy.
Right.
And they're like, it's sort of something that it's a lot easier for me to realize, like, wow, there's 25 people in this room, but they're all digging it.
Sure.
I can vibe with that much easier than I can, wow, there's 400 people in here all out of it because they're noticing that something is wrong.
Yeah, absolutely.
That is really, it's easier for me to shake because a lot of times if my mic goes out, it's a little simpler fix, or if it's a cable goes out. But if it's like guitars or drums and you have to like cross-reference 50 things to make sure to find what it is, I notice that it's like bipolar isn't, I think that what people think bipolar is, yeah, Mark was really happy and then he got really sad. And they think that it's like proximity.
Mm.
But I think it's one little thing. Like I have said, that's the best show I've ever played in my life, probably 700 times. And I've probably said that was the worst show I've ever played, probably 700 times. Like, it's not that I go from super happy to super sad all the time, like zigzagging. It's that my highs are too high and my lows are too low. 25 Kids is the worst show, or 500 Kids is the best show. And even if I've played more or less, these things are so, it's just like amplified no matter what the stimulus is. If I stub my toe, let's cancel the tour.
Right.
And if I find $1 on the floor, let's buy a Lamborghini because we won the lottery.
Right.
And I recognize that that's not logical, but it doesn't prevent the feeling from being like, you know what, screw it, we don't have to do the tour.
Yeah, no, I am so guilty of that as well, and literally canceling tours because, like, I think we were like in the back of the bus one time, and we had this tour scheduled, and no one wanted to do it. I'm like, let's not do it. You know, I mean, you're like, all right, call the manager. We're not doing it. You know, and it just, holy shit, what did we just do?
Yeah,
Totally cancel the tour. Oh my goodness, and everyone's mad online. Like, anyway. Yeah, I totally agree with that, and it's hilarious to hear somebody articulate it that way because, yeah, it's like, oh, cool, we have enough to buy 2 buses. We rent 2 buses for this tour because it's like, what? Everyone's going to come home, like, owing money.
Yeah.
You know what I thought was interesting? I won't say who the artist was, but he was a big rap artist for a while, and he would call me every so often and get in these long, conversations with me until I put a stop to it for my own self-care. And he was like, he wanted me to come on tour with him and like be his human emotional regulator,
So
which would have
harder, bro.
It would have killed me. I mean, I can handle a lot. Like I have a whole trauma background of chaos management and whatever. So people like that will look for me to do that for them. And I had to learn that was part of what made me depressed. But this guy really wanted this because he'd say, listen, I get on stage and then I do these, I'm in front of 40,000 people, or I'm on SNL or whatever. And then I get off stage and I'll just say yes to everything because I'm so high on what happened. And I need someone that I can look across the room and I can look at you, and you just looking at me is going to make me go, nope, can't do it. Nope, can't do that. And think for me, I was like, hell no, I'm not doing that. I will die, you will thrive, and I will be dead and suicidal, or suicidal and then dead.
And I think there's something to be said too, that you might accidentally, because you're caught up in the moment, you just saw a show, you're high, you're like, yeah, do it. That's a great idea.
No, see, I do that for myself, but for other people, because of the chaos management, I am really good at being like, I don't think that that's a good idea.
That's cool.
But I will do that for myself. Oh, yes. Let's start a brand new startup, a podcast network, and write a book, and put on 4 mental health conferences at universities in 1 year.
Right.
Oh, my. Are you kidding? I mean, I'll do that for myself. But I guess what I wonder, for you guys is it's that way anyway when you do these kind of things and you are in front of a crowd and you're high off of your performance, and then you add mental health struggles on top of that. What I know we're getting close on time, but how do you, because you have to be able to manage yourself. You can't walk around with a sober coach or a mental health coach all the time. And first of all, it isn't affordable for most people. And the goal is to be able to be someone that
self-sufficient.
Exactly. So let's start with you, Mark. How do you manage that? And I'm sure it's a peak and valley thing. It's not like, oh, I got it now, I'll forever be okay.
Yeah, no, I don't think I manage it.
Gotcha.
I mean, I do each day I get better, right? Yeah. And maybe if I've been working at this since, I don't know, right around 2012-ish, really working on it starting in 2014.
Mm.
Just get a little better each day. And I manage so one of my strengths is learning, and I just try to learn and learn. By learning, I can apply that where feasible to my life. Just podcasts like this, like if I were the viewer and not the participant, I'm picking up a lot of useful information on things, just perspective that I've never had before, or maybe I'm finding a commonality where I feel less alone. So for me, it's learning and then applying it in real life situations. And just the other day, I listened to Joe Rogan podcast, and the comedian Nikki, excuse me if I mispronounced the last name, Glazer or Glasser, probably Glazer. But anyway, she was speaking about her mental health issues, and the way she was speaking, it rang so familiar. I was like, man, this is how I talk. This is exactly how I feel about certain situations. And there I was, the viewer, taking away, like, feeling less alone.
Right.
And
thank you.
That's pretty cool stuff. So, like, that's kind of how I.
Will you do my commercial for my network saying just that? This is why we do podcasts.
Absolutely. It's $150 an hour until I get it right.
So Johnny, how about you? Because I actually saw you get upset on stage at the last one, and that was the same night where I fainted in front of you and got kicked in the head. It was such a trip. But anyway, that was a weird night for everybody. But I saw you get irritated about something, and I also have seen you be very like, look, this is my pre-warm up that I got to do. I'm not talking to anyone right now before I got on stage. So, you know, I've seen that process for you.
Yeah, I think so. I love what Mark said about learning, because I think to manage, like, so if you're managing a budget, you like pick a definitive, like, okay, I want $5,000 in my savings account by this time. And it's like very concrete, and you make mathematical calculations, and then you discover, here's how much I need to save. Okay, it's solved. Next problem. But with all mental health issues, it's like so qualitative, and it grows and changes, and like it looks different almost every couple minutes. So if you have a mindset that's like, so I went to school for psych. I didn't know if you knew that, Mark.
No.
And there's a danger for me to say, yeah, I have already read about that. When I'm listening to a podcast, or when I'm reading an article or talking to a friend, I'm like, yeah, I'm very familiar. You don't have to tell me again. And I think that the number one way that you can stand in the way of yourself healing is decide that your method works for you.
Sure.
You don't need to be open to learning from other people. I think the more often someone's like, hey, this yoga thing really helps me, my response is, ooh, 10 minutes of yoga a day is going to fix my brain. But if I respond that way and don't hear someone out or give it a shot, or at least read about it or something, if I immediately dismiss it, I'm closing a door that could make my management of my mental health more efficient. So right. I think half of it is staying really open to stuff that even someone's like, hey, eat a can of black beans a day. And I'm like, what the heck?
And have gas like you never experienced.
I'm not going to lie. I'm going down this carnivore diet path because of Jordan Peterson and his daughter. So, and I'm like, I'll tell you what, 2 weeks in and my anxiety is just, I'm pretty interesting here. So if it's, but again, it's open-mindedness of what I know about nutrition. I know that this is the most ridiculous thing I could do. So I'm like, but all right, I'll try it. I'm open-minded.
So it's a lot of protein, right? A lot of
meat.
Dude, I am telling you right now, okay, and I'm sorry to all the vegans out there. I tried that. I literally I have to have animal protein every day. Otherwise, I am going to struggle mental health wise through that day. I just have to.
it's interesting. So Jordan Peterson and his daughter both cured their depression by adopting an only carnivore diet. So they basically eat steak and drink water, and that's that.
Wow.
And I'm not that extreme with it. I'll eat chicken, pork, but I notice, so I've experimented with this now twice, and I did it for a few weeks, a few months ago, and then I went back to a standard American diet where I was like, let's go get some Dairy Queen, whatever, and just having fun. And my anxiety, my depression, it just felt like extreme. And then I'm gaining weight, which makes me depressed. And then I'm like, man, so I know that there's better ways to diet, and I know that there's better approaches to losing weight, and I know that losing weight can help with a lot of issues, but I was more intrigued by depression, only meat. What's going on here? So and a few other people have reported this, so I'm trying it, and I have not had anxiety since I've been back on it. It's bizarre.
You got to email me and just let me know, how that goes for you. Because I'm going
to try it for a month, and I don't think it's a long-term solution by any means, but I think that there's something interesting behind it. And I've always been a nerd with this kind of diet experimentation stuff. I've kind of gone and tried most things just to see what it's all about. But again, I agree with you, Johnny, about being skeptical, but also being open-minded. And I just look forward to whatever. Hey, aside from banging my head against the wall repeatedly, if someone says that they find, good relief in that, I might be inclined to try it.
I have told people, listen, I have, and I will continue to try everything. I lived on a commune for 3 months, spiritual. I mean, I'll put a crystal in my rectum.
You did the Wanderlust and crystals.
Yes. If somebody said that's going to help you, exactly. But yeah.
JP's, was that guy on the internet, this ultra spiritual with JP, the long red hair guy?
Yes. He's hilarious. Yeah, I love that guy. Well, okay, we got to close this out. This has been awesome. I want to make sure, Johnny, I say thank you, Johnny Crowder of the band Prison, and also the founder of an amazing application called Coke Notes that I get every day, a text on my phone that I know is from you, and I love it.
Wait till you see today's, because it has to do with what we talked about. That's really fun.
Oh, really?
It's already been scheduled, and I can't wait for you to see it.
Oh, very cool.
I'm downloading it now. Coke Notes.
It's so awesome. Yes.
Yeah. So, Mark, I'll email you after this.
It is so great. You never know when the texts are going to come in. So it's not like it's good. And I know the science behind that too, because I know him and he's a sponsor of, our network, but I never know when they're going to come in, so that my brain isn't ready to just disregard, that's a Coke Nuts text, because I don't know when it's coming. So it does, and I read it, and it has this effect, and I'm like, wow, I want every treatment. Anyway, I could do a whole commercial about it. But
awesome.
You were our guest, so please tell our listeners the name of the film and where they can find out more about you and the film and where it's going to be playing and all that good stuff.
Sure. The name of the film is Down Again, and everything is located on our official website, downagainfilm.com. And if you make a mistake and accidentally put in downagain.com, you're going to get some guy's LinkedIn page. So for whatever reason, he beat us to the punch. Wow. He's now using it for LinkedIn profile pics. I don't know. Anyway, downagainfilm.com. And the movie is there, and some behind the scenes stuff, some little extra. I think in the video, you only get to see partial performances of the music, where on the website you can find the full, and all of our press will put up this interview on there and everything. So it's kind of our main hub.
Awesome. Well, I watched it twice. And
cool. Thank you.
Loved it. Absolutely loved it. I was like, I can't wait to do this interview.
Awesome.
I wanted to do this webcasting wise too, just because that gives you all that, all that much more coverage from
Absolutely.
our network. So
Well, I'm glad I finally figured it out. I apologize for that.
You're fine. You're fine. And of course, listeners, thank you so much for sticking it out with me, especially with the same stories you've heard over and over again. But I appreciate it, listeners, and thanks for tuning in to another
Good to see you, Johnny.
Mental Health
You
News
too,
Radio.
brother.